The Lighthouse Keeper's Secret. Story of Love, Time and Fate. Chapter 1. The Inheritance. Evelyn Moore had never given much thought to lighthouses. They were relics of the past, standing as lonely sentinels against the sea. But when she received a letter informing her that she had inherited her great-uncle Henry's lighthouse on the cliffs of Blackthorn Bay, she felt an unshakable pull toward the place. Blackthorn was a quiet coastal town, shrouded in mist and old stories. The townspeople greeted her with kindness, yet their smiles faded when she mentioned the lighthouse. A shopkeeper, an elderly woman with silver hair, hesitated before saying, "That place has a history, dear. Not all of it pleasant." Evelyn brushed off the warnings. It was just an old building. But as she climbed the winding path to the lighthouse, the wind whispered through the tall grass, sending a strange shiver down her spine. Chapter 2. Whispers in the Wind. The lighthouse stood at the very edge of the world, its towering structure weathered by time and salt. The heavy wooden door groaned as she pushed it open. Inside, dust clung to the air, and the scent of aged paper filled her lungs. That night, as she lay in the small bedroom on the upper floor, she heard it, the wind carrying something else with it. Voice. Fame. Evelyn. She bolted upright, her heart pounding. The sound seemed to come from the old study down the hall. Gripping a candle, she stepped cautiously inside. A leather-bound journal lay open on the desk, though she hadn't touched it. She read the last entry. "The watchers are growing restless. And the door. It must never be opened." Chapter 3. The Locked Room. The next morning, she explored the lighthouse more thoroughly. At the very top of the spiral staircase, she found a door. Unlike the others, this one was locked with a heavy iron keyhole. Her fingers brushed the handle, and a strange warmth pulsed beneath her touch. She pulled back, shaking her head. It was just an old door. Nothing more. That evening, as the sky darkened, she wandered down to the cliffs. The ocean stretched endlessly, its surface a silver mirror under the moon. That's when she saw him. Chapter 4. The Man in the Mist. A man stood near the water, his dark coat billowing in the wind. Something about him felt oddly familiar. "You shouldn't be here," he said as she approached. "I inherited the lighthouse," Evelyn replied. "I think that gives me the right." The man studied her, his gaze filled with something unreadable. "Then you should know it doesn't belong to you. It belongs to the past." Before she could respond, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the mist. Chapter 5. The Letter from the Past. That night, she couldn't stop thinking about the stranger. His words unsettled her. Who was he? Unable to sleep, she retrieved her great-uncle's journal and flipped through its brittle pages. A folded letter slipped out. It was addressed to her, but it was dated over 100 years ago. "To my dear Evelyn, by the time you read this I will be gone, but my promise remains. The lighthouse watches over the lost, guiding them home. Some souls wander, waiting for a light to lead them forward. Tonight you may see them, don't be afraid. You were always meant to take my place." Chapter 6. Dreams of Another Life. That night, she dreamed of a woman who looked just like her, standing at the lighthouse window. A man stood beside her, Adrian. But the dream ended in tragedy. The woman ran to the cliffs, screaming his name. The sea swallowed him whole. Evelyn woke with a start, the scent of salt and roses lingering in the air. Chapter 7. A Portrait of a Stranger. Determined to uncover the truth, she searched the lighthouse. In the storage room, she found an old canvas draped in cloth. She pulled it away and gasped. The painting was of Adrian, but it was dated 1872. Chapter 8. The Phantom Light. The lighthouse had not been operational for decades, yet that night its beacon flickered on. Shapes moved on the shore below, shadowy figures in the mist. One of them turned toward her. A whisper drifted through the air. "Evelyn!" She stumbled back. The door to the locked room rattled. Chapter 9. A Love Across Time. Adrian found her the next day. "You've seen them, haven't you?" She nodded. "Who are they?" "They're the ones who never found their way home," he said softly. "And I am one of them." Her breath caught. "What do you mean?" "I loved a woman once," he murmured. "She looked just like you. We were meant to leave together, but fate had other plans. I died at sea that night. And I've been here ever since." Chapter 10. The Curse of the Lighthouse. The lighthouse was never meant to be a home. It was a beacon for lost souls. And Adrian was trapped in its grasp. But Evelyn realized something else. She had been part of this story before. She had loved him before. And she had lost him before. Chapter 11. The Rising Storm. A storm rolled in, the waves crashing violently below. The spirits were restless, whispering louder. Adrian took her hands. "You can break the curse, Evelyn. But you have to make a choice." Chapter 12. The Decision. She had two options. Walk away and leave the lighthouse behind forever. Set Adrian free but risk losing him again. She looked into his eyes. "I won't lose you again." Chapter 13. A Leap of Faith. As the storm raged, she climbed to the top of the lighthouse with Adrian beside her. The wind howled, the spirits gathering one last time. She took his hand. No more waiting. And together they stepped into the mist. Chapter 14. The Light That Never Fades. When Evelyn opened her eyes, the lighthouse was warm, glowing with golden light. The spirits were gone, and Adrian was alive. He touched his face in wonder. "I'm free." The past had rewritten itself. The curse was broken. Chapter 15. A New Beginning. The townspeople say the lighthouse has never shone so brightly. Evelyn and Adrian remain there, not as ghosts but as its keepers guiding the lost home. And whenever the wind whispers, she smiles. Because love, like light, never truly fades.